Wilberforce was born in 1759 into a wealthy family in England. As a young man, he was very social, rich, and successful. At only 21 years old, he was elected to Parliament, the group of people who made the laws for the British Empire. At that time, William lived a life of parties and politics. But in 1785, he experienced what he called his great change. He became a deeply religious Christian. He began to ask himself, how can I use my life for good? During this time, Britain was the world leader in the slave trade. Huge ships carried millions of people from Africa to work on plantations. The conditions were abhorrent. Men were chained together in the dark below deck, unable to move. Many died from disease or hunger. Most people in Britain accepted this because it made the country very rich. William faced a massive conflict. Should he stay quiet and keep his easy life, or should he fight the most powerful businessmen in the world? In 1787, he wrote in his journal, "God Almighty has set before me two great objects, the suppression of the slave trade and the reformation of manners." The fight was not easy. It lasted for 20 years. Every year, William introduced a new law to stop the slave trade, and every year he lost. His enemies were powerful. They threatened his life. He became very sick from the stress and suffered from a painful stomach condition. Sometimes he felt completely exhausted and wanted to give up. But his faith and his friends, like John Newton, encouraged him to keep going. The key turning point happened in 1806. A new government was formed that was more sympathetic to his cause. Instead of just talking about morality, the abolitionists showed that the slave trade was also becoming bad for the economy. Finally, on February 23, 1807, the House of Commons voted again. This time, they didn't just listen, they cheered. The law passed by a huge majority. William sat with his head in his hands, crying tears of joy. The slave trade in the British Empire was finally dead. William Wilberforce did not stop there. He spent the rest of his life fighting to free the people who were already slaves. He died in 1833, just a few days after Britain passed the law to end slavery completely. William's story teaches us that change takes time, but with persistence and courage, one person can change the world. All right, let's go over some of the vocabulary and phrases we just heard. Wealthy. Having a great deal of money, resources, or assets. Rich. My neighbor is a wealthy businessman who travels the world every summer. Abhorrent. Inspiring disgust and loathing. Logic or morality that is completely unacceptable. The way he treats his employees is absolutely abhorrent. Elect. To choose someone to hold a public office or a position by voting. The citizens will elect a new mayor during the local voting next Tuesday. almighty, having complete power, omnipotent, often used in a religious context. Many people pray to the Almighty for health and safety during difficult times. Object: a goal, purpose, or the main thing you are trying to achieve. The main object of this meeting is to decide on the budget for next year. Suppression: the action of forcibly putting an end to something or preventing its development. The government's suppression of the protest was criticized by international news. Reformation: the action or process of improving an institution or practice. The school is planning a reformation of its rules to make them more fair for students. Exhausted: feeling very tired or drained of all energy, either physically or mentally. I was completely exhausted after working a 12-hour shift at the hospital. Sympathetic: feeling, showing, or expressing pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortunes, or being in favor of an idea. My boss was very sympathetic when I told her I needed to take a day off for family reasons. Now, let's do shadowing practice. Repeat after me. How can I use my life for good? How can I use my life for good? How can I use my life for good? How can we change the world for the better? How can we change the world for the better? How can we change the world for the better? Huge ships carried millions of people from Africa to work on plantations. Huge ships carried millions of people from Africa to work on plantations. Huge ships carried millions of people from Africa to work on plantations. He saved some food to eat for dinner. He saved some food to eat for dinner. He saved some food to eat for dinner. William sat with his head in his hands, crying tears of joy. William sat with his head in his hands, crying tears of joy. William sat with his head in his hands, crying tears of joy. She stood with her back against the wall, checking her phone. She stood with her back against the wall, checking her phone. She stood with her back against the wall, checking her phone. Is such the fast that I choose, a day for a person to humble himself. Isaiah 58, verse 5. Is such the fast that I choose, a day for a person to humble himself. Isaiah 58, verse 5. Is such the fast that I choose, a day for a person to humble himself. Isaiah 58, verse 5.